سَبْعَةٌ يُظِلُّهُمُ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلْ فِي ظِلِّهِ يَوْمَ لَا ظِلَّ إِلَّا ظِلُّهُ. 7 groups, Allah will shade them in His shade, the day where there is no other shade except for His shade. On that day, nothing else matters. So either I fall into one of these 7 groups, is what the Prophet is saying, or I'm going to be in a difficult position. He said, number 1, Imamun Adil. Imamun Adil. A leader who is just. Now, in the Shi'i context, when we hear the name or the noun Imam, our mind, of course, goes towards the Ahlul Bayt, who are the ultimate of the A'immah. Yes? They are granted the greatest status in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when the narration says Imamun Adil, it's not referring to the 12 Imams. It's referring to who? Referring to anybody who's in a leading position. And every single one of us, in one shape or form, is leading. And some in a more community aspect and so on and so forth. Some know in their households. Yes? Every father is an imam. He's leading in his own house. A mother is an imam in her own way. He's leading. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, if I put you in a position where you are leading, you're given some sort of authority, people look up to you in whatever shape and form. If you have adl, if you're just, then you will be amongst those who will be shaded by the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. Imamun adil. So let me ask myself, now I'm given this position, this authority. Do I apply justice in this sense of authority that I have? Yes? So I run a business, there are people who work for me. Do I apply justice there? Yes? I'm raising children in my house. Do I apply justice there? Yes? A father, everything that he does in the house is seen as a figure of authority. Is he applying justice there? Is he treating his children with the rights of a believer? You know, the rights of the believer, maybe this Muharram will do a full talk on it. The rights of the believer, in some narrations, they said 30 different rights. 30 different rights. Yes? You can't make fun of them, you can't humiliate them, you can't backbite about them, you can't trick them, you can't lie to them, and the list continues on and on. 30 different rights. So this leader, does he apply this or not? So the first group that the Prophet mentioned was Imamun Adil. Okay, number 2, وَشَابٌ نَشَأَ فِي عِبَادَةِ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. Of those individuals who are particularly shaded by the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment is a youth, a young person, who نَشَأَ فِي عِبَادَةِ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. As he was coming up, he kept himself in the right circles, in the right atmospheres, so much so that now he's reached his older age. But now that he's reached his older age, his life has been a testimony to his faith over time. This person has a special status in the eyes of Allah. The one who grows old, but in the process of growing old, generally he kept himself where? In the right circles. Generally he kept himself on the right path. Sure, he fell short. Sure, he committed wrong things at times. But always he kept a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a big difference in Quran and Hadith from what we understand between a person who tries to keep himself on the right path when he is young and then enters into his older age like this. This one has extra status in the eyes of Allah. Compared to the one when he's young, he goes out there and he gives himself a green light to do whatever he wants. And he doesn't return while he's young. He waits until later when the desires have kind of settled down and they're kind of disappeared. Then at the end, when he feels like, forgive my wording, he's had all of his fun, then he says, okay, now I'm going to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This second one, also valuable in the eyes of Allah, but not comparable with the first one. The one who's young and makes a mistake and returns while he's young. Special value in the eyes of Allah, yes? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at him and says, I know that if you wanted, you could continue on this path. There's nothing stopping you. The desires are still there. You made this mistake, the desire is still there. You can still, quote unquote, go out there and have fun. But you're deciding not to wait until you're older. You're deciding to come now. And if he enters into his older age like this, then the narration says he has special value in the eyes of Allah. That's why one of the narrations that always has stuck with me is the narration that says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it comes to an old man, he looks at this old man whose beard has now turned white. Yes? His hair has turned white, his beard has turned white, but he hasn't come back to Allah now. Throughout his youth and up his middle age, he's been worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This has a special value in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes? Why? Because all of that counts for him. All of that has become credit for him. All of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set aside for him to come to the next world to reward him for that. Yes? The narration said, the one whose beard turned white while he was in worship of Allah. Special value for him. This is number 2. Number 3, وَرَجُلٌ قَلْبُهُ مُتَعَلِّقٌ بِالْمَسْجِدِ إِذَا خَرَجَ مِنْهُ حَتَّى يَعُودَ إِلَيْهِ. And a man who comes to the masjid, a brother or sister comes to the masjid, and his heart is connected to the masjid, and he leaves, and he comes back for the next function, for the next prayer, for the next salat, and throughout this time, his heart is still connected to the masjid. In other words, he's still looking forward to it. He says, you know, this Jummah I was here at Friday, inshallah next Jummah I'm here too. He carries this with him in his heart. Yes? The Prophet of Allah said, this one shaded by the shade of Allah on the day of judgment. Number 4, وَالرَّجُلَانِ, 2 people, كَانَ فِي طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ فَاجْتَمَعَتَا عَلَى ذَلِكَ وَتَفَرَّقَا. Whenever 2 people come together and their basis of coming together is some sort of good intention. They're coming together because they want to provide for their families. They're coming together because they want to visit friends and relatives that's recommended in Islam. They're coming together because they want to plan for the future of their family. They're coming together because they want to see what they can do for their community. Anything. So 2 people that come together, before they come together and after they come together, they are believers. And the reason for them coming together was what? Was to bring some khair, some good into this world. So these 2 also shaded by the shade of Allah. Yes, that would be number 4 if I'm not mistaken. Number 5, وَرَجُلٌ ذَكَرَ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ خَالِيًا. And the person who remembers Allah while he is alone. There's nobody else around. فَفَاضَتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ. So his eyes become full of tears from the fear of Allah. He says, I wronged you. What I did was wrong. فَاضَتْ عَيْنَاهُ. His eyes become full of tears means he doesn't even cry. In Arabic, when they say فَاضَتْ عَيْنَاهُ تَفِيضُ أَعْيُنُهُمْ مِنَ الدَّمْعِ, as the Quran says, it means the tear doesn't even leave his eye. All that happens is deep down he remembers the injustice he did in his relationship with Allah. So his eyes become full of tears. The narration said even to this extent, this is very valuable for me. فَفَاضَتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ. Okay, that's number 5. Number 6, وَرَجُلٌ دَعَتْهُ إِمْرَأَةٌ ذَاتُ حَسَبٍ وَجَمَالٍ فَقَالَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. And a young man, or you can put in a young woman, either way, who someone from the opposite gender makes a pass at them. Someone from the opposite gender makes an offer to them for a haram relationship. And he turns around and says, Inni akhafullah, I fear Allah. I'm going to say no to this relationship. Many of the brothers and sisters sitting here, you were young at one point, yes? So, of course, you're still young. But when we were younger, things were different. The world we live in today and the world our children live in today is a completely different situation. Completely different scenario. It takes a lot today for a young person to have the maturity and have the fear of Allah to say, no, I fear Allah, I'm going to say no to this haram relationship. Good for that person. Good for that person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a special reward for that person. So this person comes to the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a special shade waiting for him because he had the opportunity. Yes? And he said no to it. And when we say he had the opportunity, it doesn't mean he put himself in that position. No, that's not a smart thing to do, and Islam is not a fan of that. Islam is not a fan of putting yourself in a position and then getting away from it. No. Even if from the very beginning, he sets things up in his life so that he doesn't end up in that position. This also has great value. So he spends time with the right friends, certain environments that he knows is hotbeds for these types of things. He doesn't go there. He has that same value. He might have more value than the one who a pass is made at him and says no. Why? Because he didn't even allow himself to get to that point. Yes? Number 6. Number 7, وَرَجُلٌ, and this was the excuse that we brought up this whole narration for. This is the reason that we brought up this whole narration for. The 7th person who will be shaded by the shade of Allah. وَرَجُلٌ تَصَدَّقَ بِصَدَقَةٍ, the one who gives some charity, فَأَخْفَاهَا, but he hides it. حَتَّى لَا تَعْلَمَ شِمَالُهُ مَا يَتَصَدَّقُ بِيَمِينِهِ. So much so that his left hand is not aware what his right hand gave as sadaqah. Yes? Similar to the wording we had from the first imam. That he said when you give sadaqah, yes, you do it with your right hand, so much so that your left hand is not aware. He said this person also, the one who keeps it as a secret between him and Allah, will be shaded by the shade of Allah. Yeah?